Hey, I'm Alan Furstenberg.
And I'm Mark Tucker, and welcome to Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs. How's it going, Mark?
It's going well. It's another week in the voice and AI world. Um, lots,
Another
lots
week.
going on.
There always is. But yeah, I feel like though we want to kind of talk about some stuff that's only sort of going on and maybe in some ways not going on.
Yeah, a little bit. I thought this might be a good time to talk about Alexa skills and what happens when you're done for one reason or another with your Alexa skill. What's the proper way to shut it down? What are your options there? What things do you need to think about? And I was going to use kind of some of the skills that I have as examples of how I might approach the situation.
Now we've kind of touched on some of this recently about the motivations and the why. But why would people even consider shutting down their skills at this point?
Yeah, so one of the advantages that Alexa developers had for a long time were some different promotions, whether that would be
Hmm.
credits that they would get against their cost for AWS services that they use, or various other promotions that were available, and a lot of that stuff's gone away. I think we're kind of entering a new era with Alexa skills. There's still this level of uncertainty of how skills are going to progress in the future, how AI is going to play into those. Is that going to be available for third-party skills that developers create? Is that going to be only a first party skill feature? Are they going to charge for Alexa features? So there's kind of this ambiguity, sorry, in the middle ground of that. And then part of it is just uh, what services that you're using. So typically the skills that I do are hosted in AWS Lambda, which the good thing is if your skill's not being used, you're not being charged.
That well,
As
you're not being charged for active use. Is there still some, if you've got other resources that it uses, like DynamoDB or something like that?
Well, you could, and depending, I think I've got most of my DynamoDB set up so that it's actually only being charged when it's being used as well.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
It's in on-demand mode. That was something that they had introduced a number of years ago. And so instead of like provision the capacity that you're always going to be charged for, there's a way that I usually set it up and then switch it into on-demand mode. So there's not necessarily a lot of charges that are going against things like AWS Lambda and DynamoDB. And since Alexa skills have a tighter integration, you can go straight into an AWS Lambda as opposed to going through something like API Gateway. API Gateway would have some charges. If you're using some other things, I know like the logging has some fees associated with that, but usually things are pretty low cost, and
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the advantages of doing that. But depending on your usage, you could usually most of my higher costs during usage would be through DynamoDB. But so a little bit depending on what your services are, that might be a reason to shut down your skills. Depending on if it's using AWS services that you don't want to pay for. The other thing to consider is just kind of the thought of having something out there lingering that could be potentially breaking for customers as new features are being added, or in some cases, different features have been deprecated over the years. Like list features used to be available, but that's not now. There's a number of different features that were available and just haven't kind of got renewed for their capabilities. So it just might be time that you're shifting your focus someplace else, or just don't want the management of the services themselves.
Now, before we get too far away from AWS and running stuff on AWS, there was also an Alexa hosted
Yes.
level. I don't
Yeah.
remember what the right term for this was.
Yeah. So there was a capability. It didn't start off immediately, and so I never really took advantage of it because I had already established my workflows and developing skills. But there is a way that you can create an Alexa skill and provision Lambda and DynamoDB and some of those features, and in essence, up to a certain threshold, Amazon pays for it. And so it's kind of like provisioned by them. You get access to it. But usually one of the stipulations is that you're using something like Alexa Skills Kit, SDK, partly just because the way it builds it up and deploys things out. But if at some point in time, if your skill kind of outgrew that, then you have the ability to transition that over into your own AWS account. So that is a way if you wanted to keep doing Alexa skills, or if you're creating something new, then that might be an approach to take, is to look at hosting it in that kind of free provisioned area of the AWS features. And so it's basically a way of getting AWS resources for free.
So let's assume that, for a variety of reasons, you've decided it's no longer worth it to you to keep running this. You're getting enough traffic that it's costing you money, but not enough traffic that you're bringing anything in. And, trying to keep it running has become more of an issue. What other considerations might we have in, whether we want to shut it down or keep it going? Or what our next step would be in general?
Right. So there are analytics that you can look at, so you can see what kind of usage your skill is getting. So that might be something that plays into it. Your skill might be using a feature that's being deprecated, so that might be a decision point that you decide if you're going to remove that feature or just be done with the skill at that point. The other thing to consider is if you've got in-skill purchasing, specifically if you've got subscriptions turned on, because then now you have to start thinking about, how many people are using subscriptions, and what approach should I take to let them know that either subscriptions are no longer going to be available, or I ran into a situation a while ago where I had removed a skill and I noticed I was still getting subscription revenue in for the skill.
Oops.
Yeah, so I had to contact Amazon and let them know that was happening, but you would think that would be something that would just happen if you were to remove a skill completely, that it would stop billing.
Yeah, that's kind of a scary scenario. That
is.
That got that there's no connection there. That's I don't like that thought.
That was definitely concerning on my point, but those are the kind of the things that you would like to think about as you're going into that decision. And your two options really are, you can hide your skill, which really means it takes it out of the skill store so nobody new can add it. But those who currently have your skill enabled can keep using it. So as far as they know, as far as existing users know, your skill's go along fine. But then that really prevents you from pushing new features out, and new users won't be able to find it in the skill store anywhere, so they won't be adding the skill. So
okay.
that's the hide option. And then there's the remove option, which is it's going to hide it from the skill store, but it's also going to just end the skill, remove it from anybody that currently has it using it. So the experience would be, after that point, somebody would ask to start up your skill, and this skill wouldn't be available. And that's kind of a little bit of a harsh approach, I guess, if for the people that are are using it.
But on the other hand, that's still better than the alternative, which is you pull the plug on your servers, or the equivalent, and at some point Alexa, as it checks your skill, realizes that you're not there anymore and delists you. And I don't know, does it do anything at that point? I mean,
well, and I'm not exactly sure what happens on that aspect, because I know with Google Actions that there used to be like a ping that would happen so often to kind of say,
you pretty frequently.
Yeah, I don't know that Amazon actually has that same feature. I think it might have a feature when you try to start it and it fails, And after it does that a number of times, maybe it does something, but I don't think it had the same ping functionality. Or at least if it did, it was behind the scenes and they never really talked about it.
At any rate, it's far kinder
Yeah,
to go through a more official process
right, right.
than to just pull the plug.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to talk a little bit. I've got 6 skills that are still live and active on Alexa, and we'll just kind of talk a little bit about one. So the oldest skill that I have, the last time I updated it was in September of 2018. It's a skill called Serve More. Now, Serve More, the idea is that you could ask for service opportunities in your community, and it would know where you were, and it would call an API. Now, the API is from an organization, and the API is called Just Serve. I would say there's at least hundreds of thousands of people that are using the Just Serve website, and there's APIs that are available, and so I just plugged into those. But I wanted to be careful of the branding. I didn't want to use Just Serve when I didn't really have the rights to use the name. And so, I tried to promote it. Not a lot of people, found it. So it has, one, maybe two, usages 1 month, and then goes months without anybody finding anything about it. Now, it's interesting because I had reached out to this organization and said, hey, I've got this Alexa skill. This is what it does. It's along the lines of what your website does. And they were kind of excited about it, but they didn't really know what to do with it. I'm willing to give it to you, transition it over to your IT organization, because they have an organization that does websites and mobile apps. So I offered to do that. I'm like, or I could maintain it for you if you were interested in promoting it. Then I could rebrand it as this Just Serve, and you could in your current channels let everybody know that it's something that that's out there, and get usage up and actually get something that's working. But they didn't really know what to do with this animal of an Alexa skill, so they nothing really happened.
I feel like this is a conversation we've seen a little bit on the Slack recently. We should have this conversation another time in general, because I think it's an interesting conversation about where did skills and actions really fall down, and what are the lessons that we need to learn as we go forward.
So I think that's going to be a situation where we shut it down.
So I was going to say, so you've got just a couple of users a month, if that. It seems like the sort of thing where you can just go and turn it off.
Yeah, that's my strategy with that. Is I'm going to go ahead and actually remove it, and it's just going to be done. And I can delete it from my developer console. I can delete any resources and from AWS, and just call it done.
Okay. Let's talk about some of the other ones.
All right, so I've got one called Snatch Word. It's a game. I was really excited about it when it started out. It was a situation where at the time that I created it for both Alexa and Google, and everybody's playing this game where they can say a word, and if it's a word that somebody hasn't checked out or reserved, then they own the word for 7 days, but they have to renew. And if they don't renew in a certain amount of time, then somebody can snatch that word, and you get points based on how big of the letters that are in the word, how long the word is, and how often people are asking about the word. So it was my attempt at a multi-platform, being Alexa skills, Google actions, and at the time I was thinking Bixby. It had a leaderboard that mixed everybody in to the same board, so you could see that somebody was from a certain location and was on a certain device. And it was a fun game. I remember playing it quite a bit at the time, and there was this notion of I'm competing against others, and I'm trying to find really obscure words that are worth a lot of points, and discovering somebody else got it, and setting a reminder for myself of when I needed to go try to snatch it, and discovering somebody else snatched it before me. So there was quite a bit to this game that was that was pretty fun to play. Yeah, and I feel like it was one of those ideas that I got really excited about. I felt like it was innovative. It was pushing some boundaries, something that hadn't really have been done in the voice world before. But once again, it didn't really ever get a lot of traction. It got some more. I think like maybe 30 monthly active users was was kind of the best that it got. And it does have subscriptions involved with it. And what would be the proper way to shut this down with subscriptions? I think the real answer should be is that Amazon should just terminate any subscriptions once remove the skill.
Yeah.
That should be the way that happens. I don't know that I really, in this one, I've playing with the idea a little bit about doing a phased approach where I hide it for a while, and then after 3 months or something like that, then I remove it at that point in time. So it's just not ever getting any new users. But
this is the sort of case where it kind of makes sense to hide it, maybe even to push one final update out that says, "Thanks for playing. We'll be ending the game on such and such a date.
right,
Check to see if you have a subscription, and if it does say your subscription will be, your subscription has been terminated or will be terminated, or something along those lines." It's the sort of thing where, especially since you have subscribers, those you want to reach out to the subscribers somehow and say, this subscription will be ending. And that's another set of questions altogether, is can you reach out to your subscribers and say, this subscription will be ending?
well, yeah, and it is a situation because I feel like, unfortunately, the only way that you have to contact those people are if they use the skill during this, kind of sunset period. Because once again, unfortunately, I think one of the things I think was amiss on Amazon's side is that there wasn't a better tie-in to your users. I understand not wanting to spam your users, but there should be some mechanism to say, hey, I want to contact, or even a situation where when you're shutting down a skill, then you can type in like a goodbye message or something like that, so that then an email will go out to everybody that has the skill enabled and go ahead and let them know that that's happening.
So that's interesting that you have no idea who your subscribers are.
Nope. It's completely anonymous.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So what are some of the other skills, and how would you think about treating each one differently? I mean, it seems like we've seen the two kind of most common ways to address it at this point.
Yeah. So Picture Guesser is one of those. It's a kind of a tile puzzle game where you've got easy, medium, or hard, which is just the number of tiles that you have in your puzzle. And as you remove tiles, then you get to reveal part of a picture, and then you can get to guess what the picture is. And if you guess correctly, then any tiles you have left goes towards your points. This was a skill that I wrote back when Echo Show first came out, and it had the first generation of showing video of I guess image or visual output before Alexa presentation language came out.
Okay.
And so so this is kind of this skill's been redone a couple of different times. The challenge with Picture Guesser and a number of different skills is content. So there is like a subscription feature that you have access to all of the puzzles. But then if you feel like if you really want to support your users in the way that they should be, that you need to continually come out with puzzles. And it's not necessarily easy to continually come out with puzzles and release content. And so this one's being considered for removal, mostly just because of the ability to do content and not necessarily feeling like it's fair to users if I don't keep generating content for it. So that's kind of it's kind of the same type of thing. I think it's kind of closer along the lines of Picture Guesser. It's something that's got content, it's got subscriptions, and it's something that we probably want to shut down at some point, but trying to think of the best way to do it. The last three skills are kind of the newer things I have. I've got, and I think I'm going to keep these around for a while. I've got Show Widgets and Show Widgets Christmas, which are for those that are using Echo show devices that allow showing widgets. I've got things like a coin flip and magic 8 ball and things like that that are there's really no real skill functionality to them, but it's just fun widgets that you can have. So it's been one of the newer work. The last time I updated it was March of this year. So there were some features that when I first created these, it was during a kind of a beta period where I got a sneak peek of what the widget functionality would be, and I got the opportunity to create widgets. And then once the full feature came out, I had to redo some of the work that I did in the beta period because the official APIs were different than what I've got. So that's why that's kind of the last update that I made to those. I haven't looked at them recently, but this one's interesting because I've got is it BigQuery, Bigtable? I can't remember what's that Google analytics.
Both of those are Google stuff. You're probably meaning BigQuery though.
Probably BigQuery, yeah. I have to look. So I've got BigQuery integration with that, and haven't looked at it recently. It'll be kind of fun to see how over the last couple of years the growth or the usage of that is. But that's kind of fun. There's not really anything to maintain on those, so I think I'm going to keep them around. There's not really anything I necessarily have to worry about as far as expenses and things like that. Even though the skill is hosted, there has to be a skill, and there is user data that's being kept in DynamoDB. So in some ways it's kind of like a skill, but there's not a lot of things that I have to update. Last one is something called busy timers. It's kind of a skill that also has widgets in it, and the idea is that if you want to post on your widget on your screen and say, hey, like I'm gone or I'm busy, I'm recording this podcast for the next hour. It's a countdown timer so that somebody else could use a widget or ask, and that lets you know that somebody's busy or a certain room has been reserved for a certain amount of time, and then once that time is expired, then the kind of the reminder goes away. I don't know. I haven't got necessarily a lot of usage for that from others, but it's something that I've used quite a bit in the past with letting people know that, hey, it's not okay to sneak in. I'm in the middle of a meeting or I'm recording something.
But that kind of illustrates that, sometimes you're going to want to be keeping them around because even if there aren't any other users, you're still using it. A lot of people build widgets and skills for themselves, first of all.
Yeah.
And then, deal with it from, that's why I built the original Voodoo Drive, was because I had a need for it. And if other people also found a need, that's wonderful. But first and foremost, I had a need for it. And as I've been trying to find a replacement for it, I'm, trying to build its replacement.
Yeah.
With mixed success. There's still nothing that does it the way I want to do it.
So that's kind of a tour through the different skills that I have and kind of which ones I think I might mark for removal, and kind of the approach if I'm going to just remove it, am I going to hide it, and thinking about if I'm wanting to let people know. Definitely, if you're a company and a brand, and you want to make sure that you keep things in good relationship with your customers, then you probably want to go to more effort in letting them know before you remove a skill.
But as you point out, sometimes there's only so much you can do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I would agree. Where possible, you want to start a sunset process. You want to plan for, okay, we will push a new version, we will stop new people joining, we'll turn off subscriptions, we'll finish the sunset.
Yeah.
Think about it and plan those stages.
Yep.
It's always a sad day when people, who have a project they put a lot of time and effort into have to shut it down. But, it's understandable. And again, it's better than the alternative of it just kind of rots out there.
Yeah, that's true.
So we'd love to hear what other people's experiences have been with making those decisions. Where did you fall on the side of making the decision? And, what did you decide to do? How are you doing the shutdown? Feel free to leave comments below or reach out to us on social media. And, as... We'll see what's going on with Alexa in a future episode of Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs.